Good afternoon. My name is Richard Ayres and I'm a social care advisor at Care England, and I want to welcome you to the joint webinar with Citation to address cybersecurity in care and talk to the risks for the care sector, which you simply cannot afford to ignore. So we are delighted to be joined by Morgan James, the Citation Partnerships and Relationships Manager, bit of a mouthful there, and the amazingly talented Zain Javed, who is the Citation Chief Technology Officer. That's a title that always makes me quite excited when you have a chief of something. And Zain will talk us through shortly all that we need to know about the threat landscape and offer case studies to outline why cybersecurity matters, the key threats, and the real world impact cyber threats have on our sector, as well as leaving us with strategies and helping us to understand the benefits of engaging in cyber health checks, leaving us again with an outline of what good looks like for social care providers. Morgan and Zain will shortly introduce themselves and talk for about 25 to 30 minutes, at which point you are free to use the chat facility to raise any questions during the presentation, or you are free to email me any questions you have which you wish to be asked anonymously or on your behalf. Obviously, it's a sensitive area, so I'm very happy to raise those anonymously for you. I'll drop my email address into the chat for any of you who don't have it shortly. I will ask that you keep yourselves muted during the presentation, but it is great to have your cameras on if possible to make sure the session is as interactive as possible. After our panelists finish their presentation, I will facilitate a Q&A session. A couple of questions have come in already, and we will raise any questions that have come up by the chat or sent to me via email at this point. And of course, at that point, you are free to raise your hand and ask our colleagues from Citation questions directly. We are recording the session, and our intention is, as always, to note any questions, and if necessary, if we don't get to answer them all on the call, we will send an FAQ within about 48 hours of the event, along with a copy of the recording and slides, so you have them for future reference. And we'll also make sure you have the contact details of our colleagues on the call today, should you wish to connect with them directly. So without further ado, please let me hand you over to Morgan and then to Zain to introduce themselves. Over to you, Morgan.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, everyone, for joining this afternoon. Greatly appreciate your time. Just before I hand over to Zain to go through all the content of today's webinar, I just thought I'd bring a bit of clarity as to Citation and Citation Cyber. So, as many of you are probably aware, Citation, we're a proud long-standing partner of Care England, and we also are a brand family. So Citation Cyber, formerly Mitigate, are our cybersecurity arm, as we call them, and they'll be giving you as much information as we can today, helping you navigate the landscape, risks, etc., etc. So conscious of time, and we're all taking out your day, so I'm going to hand you straight over to Zain to go through today's webinar.
Cheers, thank you very much for that, Morgan. So yes, I'm Zain Javed, CTO of Citation. I'm also one of the directors of the Northwest Cybersecurity Cluster as well. So we involve ourselves quite a lot with academia as well as government to ensure that there is awareness about cybersecurity, but also that we're shaping the future of the cyber landscape here in the UK. So very briefly, we have to practice what we preach. So we've got all of the industry recognized certifications under our belt, but one of the first certification bodies for Cyber Essentials. So we have wealth of experience in helping organizations go through that, but also other notable certifications like Check and Crest for penetration testing. Okay, so with that out of the way, I want to kind of go through a bit of a scenario, because it's always good to set the scene to help everyone understand, what we're dealing with. What is the cyber attacks of landscape, and how can that translate into real life scenarios? So I want to give you a bit of a story about Margaret, who's 87, and she lives at a place called Silverdale, and been there for 3 years. She's a retired teacher with early stage dementia, and she's much loved by all the staff. She gets regular visits by her daughter Claire. And they all, love the care and compassion that's provided. Now, on one Monday, the care team logged into the system to view Margaret's medication schedule, but nothing loaded. So everything was just at a standstill. And it wasn't just Margaret's records, but everyone's records were gone. They refreshed the system and still nothing was coming up. Then all of a sudden a message appeared which said your files have been encrypted, which means that they're all completely locked down, and you have to pay £20,000 in Bitcoin digital currency. In the next 48 hours, all of your patient data will be leaked online. And that's when the panic spread. Staff couldn't access any of the notes, allergy information, care plans, medication charts, and even emergency contacts. So everything's all digitized. And for that reason, Margaret missed the ATM dose. No one was sure if it was the type of medication needed. And they also had backups in place in terms of IT, but they haven't been tested for months. So when they tried to restore them, that failed relatively quickly because they weren't tested properly. IT was outsourced and the response time was hours, not minutes. So by lunchtime, phones were ringing with concerned families. The word had spread. The local press had caught wind as well. And that's where Claire sort of found out. She went on social media and realized that something's happened. And straight away, she was obviously worried about her mother and wanted to make sure that she was okay. Eventually she managed to get in touch. And the two key medications were missed, but thankfully there was no harm. But the emotional toll on a family was quite sort of deep in that regard, and also everyone involved in the care when you're under that pressure. So this isn't sort of a Hollywood-style hacker story. This is just a basic phishing email that was clicked. And it was, done by a tired night shift employee or someone who didn't have the full kind of focus and attention for numerous reasons. But also there was no multi-factor authentication, there was no phishing training, and the data wasn't encrypted, which meant that it was sort of leaked online. There weren't any kind of risk assessments done or cyber essentials, and therefore that made it a lot more difficult to understand what is happening and what they're going through and how to handle the situation. And that then obviously resulted in the ICO looking into the processes that were put in place to defend against something like this, and it resulted in fines and also the response costs and lost revenue quickly amounted up to tens of thousands of pounds. So this is just a quick kind of setting the scene to help you understand what happens when there is a cyber attack in an organization, and that could happen to any sort of different care setting, not specifically just the care homes, but the process and what people are going through is exactly the same. And that's a good point to kind of run through the threat landscape. And as you can see, there's billions of pounds of cyber crimes is costing the UK annually. And 7.78 million businesses have experienced cyber crimes of all type. The government did a report which they found that over 50% of UK businesses experienced a cyber breach or attack in 2025. And that kind of results into the amount of UK businesses facing cyber attacks every minute. That number is obviously, going back a step, is growing at a rapid pace. So the picture isn't too great as we look to move everything into the cloud, onto the internet. So, the care sector is a goldmine for cyber criminals, but what is the motivation behind these attackers or hackers, trying to target this sector? What is what is the kind of the key points for them? So one of the things is sensitive data. They know that there is a lot of personal and medical data, which is of really high value, and they know that they can ask for ransom and ask for a decent amount of money because people are worried about sensitive data being leaked online or getting into the wrong hands. So they know that this is the industry to target because of the type of data that usually is found in there. Also, it's underfunded, which means that it's underprotected. And again, they don't, they have absolutely no moral ethics or anything like that. They will simply target whoever they can in order to take advantage. And this is a sector which is, stretched and also low on resources, and they'll take advantage of that. And the third thing is digitization. So 70% of care providers now use digital records, which means that there is more data and it's also bigger attack surface. And there's also a push for even more digitization with all of the different strategies that we're seeing from the government and across the board. So in one way, there is clear advantages of that, but there's also the negatives that if you don't manage your digitization strategy correctly, and also embedding cybersecurity as a core pillar of that strategy, then that can ultimately affect your organization and how it manages itself if it became victim to a cyber attack. And the last point is the human factor, because we know that staff are really busy and they're easy phishing targets, and that's what the criminals take advantage of. And one thing that's common across all of this is easy access point. And that's what hackers or criminals really look towards a target. They want something really easy. So if they do like an automatic scan of the internet, they will simply find and choose the target that has obviously the lowest amount of security in place. Think about a common burglar when they're walking down a street and you're presented with two cars, and one car has the windows down and the valuables all over the front seat, and the other one is locked and no one can get in. The burglar will choose the easy target because they know there'll be less resistance. And it's exactly the same thing in the cybersecurity world as well. So why does cyber matters to the care sector? As we mentioned about the sensitive data, but also the data breaches are quite severe when they actually happen. It can actually affect the safety of vulnerable individuals. And that's an important part that a lot of people don't realize how it could impact the communities and the responsibility we have to safeguard those communities. And providers also need to comply with GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation Act, the Data Protection Act, and also the CQC Care Quality Commission guidance as well. So there's a number of things that needs to be factored into when you are looking at cybersecurity. Non-compliance can lead to fines of up to £20 million or 4% of global turnover, and that's built into the GDPR regulation. And then cyber attacks can disrupt care delivery by compromising records, care plans, or medication systems. So sort of the scenario that I went through earlier, you can see how easily that can have an impact on individuals. So let's look at some of the key cybersecurity threats. How can you secure yourself? But before you do that, you need to understand what are the ways that someone can actually get into your system or attack you and be successful at it. So the first one is ransomware. Ransomware is very common now. You see it on the news all the time. We heard about the retail sector, and there's also a program on BBC last night as well, which kind of highlighted the devastating impact of ransomware to businesses who had to close down and hundreds of people losing their jobs as a result of that. So ransomware is a big problem for not just the UK, but the whole world right now, because it's easy picking for these cyber criminals. Phishing emails, I think all of us here on the sort of webinar today have experienced some sort of phishing emails. I'll be very, very surprised if you've never received a phishing email, because this is, again, a very common practice, because they just have to send hundreds of thousands and just achieve 0.001% of that kind of amount of emails they're sending to make some money out of that. So it's an easy way to take advantage of people, and they just send lots of phishing emails. And the kind of phishing emails are also advancing as well. Whereas now you're looking into more of a digital world where we're having to scan QR codes when we pay for parking and things like that. And what these criminals are doing is they're actually printing out malicious links or downloads and printing stickers with those QR codes and putting it on top of the QR codes you see in parking spaces and so on. Which is again, to a person who's not known or doesn't know about this threat, they will just simply scan in without even looking at the link. They'll just click it, and that could simply provide access to these criminals. Unpatched software. So this is one that gets unnoticed quite a bit because we're all busy and we don't want to lose our work when we're working on computers or mobile devices. And the last thing you want to do is reboot your computer and you lose everything. So that's always one of the reasons why a lot of people put the updates off. But the reason why those updates are rolled out is because they contain important security fixes. And if you don't update your systems in time, then that can ultimately open up your systems to these attackers. So when I was talking earlier about when they're scanning the internet looking for specific issues, if they find a device that doesn't have the right sort of fix for it, then they are easy target for them. Outdated technology, so those systems that just don't have any support available anymore, and we see that a lot in NHS, Nuclear Decommissioning Authority, and various organisations where you've got some bespoke systems or legacy systems. So you need a specialist strategy to protect against that. Insider threats, so people within your organization who, again, accidentally click on a link or sometimes knowingly stealing information for their benefit as well. Limited cybersecurity resources, which we touched on earlier, and along with that, supply chain. So if you're working with third-party providers, sometimes it's not you who's the problem in terms of cybersecurity, it's the supplier who's holding all of your data and they're not taking cybersecurity seriously. So that when they have a breach, it pretty much affects you because all of your data is in their hands. So doing a good due diligence on all of your suppliers is equally as important as prioritizing your own security. And last but not least, lack of cyber awareness. If people don't know about the cyber threats, how can you expect them to protect themselves? So the real world impact of some of these can result to service disruption, which again can lead to harm, loss of the CQC trust, regulatory consequences, and one that's very difficult to recover from is reputational damage. Because what we don't realize is that once we lose that sort of trust from people because they think that you can't secure their data or look after their family members, then they will lose their trust in that organization, and that can be very difficult to recover from. If you've got insurance and all these other things, they can help you with the financial side of things and recovery side of things, but the reputational one is one that can be very difficult to recover from. So what's the message? And obviously this is not all doom and gloom. We kind of see all of these issues and threats that we're faced with, but there are steps that you can take to effectively put a good cybersecurity strategy in place. And if you do that, what are the benefits? Well, the big benefit is it reduces your risk, which means that there's less chances of your organization becoming a victim to cyber attacks that we talked about. It boosts reputation. It can actually work in your favor because you can be proactive and market this on your website as well as in your sort of marketing collateral to say that you're taking cybersecurity seriously. This is something that you take pride in, that you want to take you want to secure all of the all of the data of the patients and people that you work with. So that can actually work in your favor and could be a really good differentiator when you look at the competitive landscape. ensure that you're compliant, because there is lots of legislations that are already in place, like the Data Protection Act, the GDPR, but also there's more legislations that are coming up as well. So for example, there is a bill that's being introduced into Parliament, which is the Cybersecurity Resilience Bill, and that will now have a lot more stringent fines, as well as criteria for national critical infrastructure organizations, which can include IT providers, MSP providers, and the health care sector as well. So there's lots of moving parts in that at the moment, but there are signs that there's going to be more regulations and more fines and things like that coming into force. I think just today there was something on NCSC website which they mentioned that the government are now going to fine people for actually paying ransom as well. And that could mean that you're effectively hit with a double ransom. And someone mentioned that in our kind of a group chat earlier, which is absolutely not what you want when you're faced in a tough position. Increases visibility as well, ensuring that you've got a full view of all of the different systems that you have in place, because if you don't know what you're protecting, what are the chances of you defending against a cyber attack? Improves resilience, because not only you're just ticking the box to say that, oh, you've done this cybersecurity strategy, but by actually proactively working on all of those things, you're improving your resilience. So if anything happens in real life, then you can effectively recover from that very quickly, because you know what to do and what to deal with. Demonstrates innovation in terms of looking forward and essentially looking at the digitization strategy and making sure that cybersecurity is an important part of that, and safeguarding business operations as well, and saving a lot of people's jobs, because we've seen firsthand that these type of attacks can lose people a lot of money, and the first thing that they need to do is cut cost in order to survive, and that means a lot of jobs come under fire for that reason. So what I wanted to do was give you a quick overview of, well, what does good look like, and there's different sort of ways that you can target or implement a cybersecurity strategy. You don't have to go in and get the best solution that money can buy, because everyone has different budgets. There's different scales or different points in time where you're looking to implement this. You may not have the resources or budgets and so on. So there's also good things that you can put in place without sort of going straight to the to kind of all in one solution. So in terms of what's good is you can put things like awareness training. That's got to be one of your first important part, is making sure that everyone's aware of these risks, so that people aren't clicking things or allowing people to manipulate them in order to give information to these criminals. Cyber Essential certification, very low cost, £320. But what it does is it gives you a bit of a checklist of all the things you need to put in place as a bare minimum. And that's something that's good to kind of kickstart and look at. Even if you don't go for the certification, just downloading the questionnaire and going through the steps involved can be a good way, a good starting point. Policy tools as well, so making sure that you've got good templates like password policy, what should staff do when they're working from home, or what does your information security policy looks like. And so you should have some sort of policies in your organization. So next, you want to move on to what's become a better strategy, and that's about now introducing phishing simulation, where you're actually testing the alertness of staff. And what this does is it simulates a phishing email and will highlight the people that require that extra training or they need more guidance and support. It's not designed to catch people out, but it's designed to identify where your risk areas are, so you can do something about it, so you don't actually end up having a breach as a result of someone clicking on a link. Cyber Essentials Plus, so that's the next level up from the basic, where you can actually put in a bit more of a validation from a third party to confirm that what you've got in in place is actually compliant with the scheme. And it also has, lots of scanning and testing, which can again provide you a good overview and visibility of what needs to be done, and a bit of a roadmap on how to address all of those issues. And then if you've got Microsoft 365, or if you've got Google Workspace, or if you've got any type of sort of third-party system like that to manage your emails and so on, then also look at the configurations, because a lot of people think, well, we're with Microsoft, so we don't need to do anything, because they're doing all of the protection for us. But that's a common misconception, because most of these systems, they're designed to be plug and play, which means that when you use them, they're set up to be easy for you to set up. And a lot of the times they enable everything, which means that an attacker could have various different ways to get into your system. So what you should be doing is turning off the things that you don't need to reduce the amount of attack surface for these criminals. So doing that kind of configuration review can really help you with that. Vulnerability scanning is another one which gives you a good overview of your systems and what you have in place. And then what does best look like? So this is where you've got a board level buy-in. So again, depending on your budgets, I know organizations that prioritize this as kind of like the first point, but also I've got organizations who rather do everything else first. So depending on your budget requirements, getting that board level buy-in is very important. So your leadership teams understand exactly why this needs to be done. Then you've got other certifications like 27001, 9001, which are a lot more recognized. And finally, penetration testing, which is simulating a real life hacking scenario. So you can get a sense of, well, if this was to happen in real life, what are they going to find and how they're going to get in. We'll actually do that and provide you with a report that says this is how it's done. And any other pen test provider will also do the same. So we normally leave that to the end, mainly because you really want to put all of the systems in place and then test it. There's no point testing yourself if you know that you haven't got good processes or policies in place. So that's why it kind of fits into that the third category. Okay. And then lastly, just want to cover another thing that you can do, which is like an health check. So this is like your digital MOT. So this is what kind of helps you understand exactly what you've got in place. It's normally designed for people who don't know where to start. So there's Cyber Essentials, there's training, there's all these different things, but you just don't know where to start. What do you tackle first? And that's where getting an expert in to do a full kind of a 360 overview at a very sort of affordable and competitive, time-limited sort of engagement gives you a quick sort of a plan of what to address first and what to resolve first. Because every organization is different, and you may be at different points of your strategy and your maturity in your organization. And that's why a health check can give you a bit of a guide on what to work on. So that's something that, again, can be of use. And just want to quickly kind of run through this. I won't go through everything, but just to give you an idea, you will get the slides from this. And there's a number of things that you can put in place. And again, you don't have to do everything. You can kind of pick and choose what's most important to you. And, we can assist you with that. And there's obviously lots of reasons why, we can be a good partner, an extension to your security team, or a trusted partner that can kind of help you with those things. Okay, great. So over to you, Richard.
Thank you very much, Zain. That was incredibly insightful there, really, really helpful. And it's important, I think, that we do understand the cybersecurity as it is only a matter of time that we see attacks across the sector. The sector has largely escaped major attacks, but we've seen a lot of the larger retailers attacked. I think it's just a matter of time before it comes to our sector. And thank you for bringing to life the impact of ransomware in a real example, because I sometimes struggle because I've never seen an attack, exactly what that kind of looks like and the impact it has on businesses and for those who also draw on our services and their families. And of course, if the media gets hold of it, it can be really seriously damaging. The costs of recovery are significant. but also you really emphasize that importance of reputational damage, which I think is really, really important to understand. It's worrying that over 50% of businesses experience some form of attack in 2025. That concerns me. And whilst we've been on the phone, I've had an email in from one organisation saying that they were attacked on a phishing incident yesterday, and if I get emails from a certain individual, to ignore them. So again, literally as you're talking, that email came through at 14:16. So you know, very, very timely. I've kind of often wondered why our sector's data is so attractive to cyber criminals, and you've kind of said that because of the data, it just creates such significant value. And because of our drive for digitization as well, we're almost creating more opportunities, creating that digital content to be taken advantage of. I also think it's very worrying that the fines could be as much as 4% of turnover, and there's many organisations that we work with that do not even generate 4% of profit a year. So that's going to really have a very negative impact on businesses. And you know, attacks of ransomware, phishing emails, the unpatched softwares, you know, third parties, limited resources awareness, all of those issues are things that we really need to kind of bring to life. And I think the smaller providers without maybe IT functions will have some significant exposures in those areas. But you took us through those prevention steps, which I think are really great. But it seems mad that you could be fined for paying ransomware when you're really just trying to get back online. But thank you, really, really helpful to understand what goods looks like and how you can build on it. I think it was a great point there about Cyber Essentials, £320 to get the checklist. That's a great place to start for people. We'd, I think, suggest that people do consider that as an absolute minimum. The digital MOT and the health check are really, again, important ways to kind of get things moving. So thank you for that. I am going to invite questions. If anyone would like to put their hand up and ask Zain a question directly, please do so. I do have a couple of questions via email, which I will raise. You can take the slides down now if you want to, Zain, so we can see people. One organisation says, we have residents in our facility who need to access the internet and have had someone even run a small business from our service. We've got people who regularly game and interact online. So I assume this is some of the younger adults living in services. How do we ensure we are protected as a business as well as protecting our residents, and ensure that our residents don't create cyber risks to our business? Great question.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant question. And I think that's now quite common in terms of remote working as well, when you're using shared workspaces and so on. But in that kind of setting, what's important is that you set up separate networks. So like you have a guest network and a corporate network. So what that does is it segregates the two environments. So you can still provide internet access to those individuals, but they just can't access any of your work related resources, as well as if someone was to kind of connect into a single network, they can monitor all of the different things that are going on. For example, if you're visiting the type of websites, what you're sending and receiving, someone on that same network can have access to all of that. So by segregating it, then you're putting that kind of wall in between so that the two worlds don't mix. So I would definitely put some segregation in place. And more sort of, you know, nowadays with a lot of modern routers and firewalls have that capability built in. So they should be, you don't have to spend a huge amount of money to set something up like that.
You can have just one line coming in, and you can have separate networks off of the same line to keep both protected. Okay, it's very helpful. Yeah. Another question here is, we're a small care provider with no IT team. What is the first thing we should do to protect ourselves?
Yeah, so again, if someone who doesn't have an in-house IT team, then as I mentioned earlier, like, you know, looking at Cyber Essentials, because what that does is it essentially gives you a bit of an idea of what to go and put in place. And the good thing about Cyber Essentials is that it's not designed for enterprise or large businesses. It's for everyone, and it literally, you know, says that you can take advantage of built-in firewalls in Microsoft Windows or Mac or whatever platform you're using. You don't have to go and spend a huge amount of money or get IT providers to put solutions in place. It's taking advantage of what you already have, but in more so on how you configure those devices. And that's when you may need some additional help. But there's lots of tools available that can scan and find issues and then also fix the issues as well. So if you need more information about this, we can definitely kind of walk you through that as well to see how you can implement these solutions that don't require in-house IT or outsource IT providers.
That's really helpful. We'll make sure that your contact details are provided to people with a copy of the recording and the slides afterwards. A question from me really around the health checks, the digital health checks and what have you. Could you give us like a real world example of where you've gone into an organisation, you've uncovered something through one of those sort of cyber health checks? What sort of things are you uncovering that lead to risks to a business?
Yeah, so we see a lot of the times, so just to kind of give you an example, this is when someone who had the Cyber Essential certification already in place and they needed us to go and do a health check and get an idea of what kind of things they need to focus on. So when we actually did the assessment, we did what's called a dark web check as part of the health check. And the organization were completely unaware that around 200 of people's emails were linked to data breaches online. And there were also viruses on some of their computers as well. So there's these malware called info stealers, and what that happens is, and this is from streaming websites or free websites that you normally go and you think they're completely harmless, but it downloads these sort of malware behind the scenes, and what they're designed to do is be very stealth, and they just record information. So if you go on a banking website, it will log that you're on the banking website, and it will then capture all of the different keyboard keystrokes that you're putting in. So it's designed to just take a lot of information, passwords and things like that. And the organization did not know that this was going on, but because of the health check, we're able to identify which of those devices were infected, because the people who put these info stealers in, they then take all of that data, they put it on the dark web, and they basically say that if someone gives us a lot of money, we can give you all of this access. And that's where we're able to find a lot of these breaches and data in the dark web and reports to the organization that's affected. So that's just one thing. There's so many different things, Richard. Like a lot of organizations just aren't even aware of the devices they have on their network. We've had one where we were doing a scan and found that there was a really old server that was running that was vulnerable. It had lots of vulnerabilities. They didn't know it existed, so they weren't updating it. And when we actually did the scan and we found that it was the kind of access way into the rest of the network. So that's just one of the many examples.
You said around you found sort of 200 staff sort of data breaches online. So this is not a small organisation. So you sometimes assume that when you've got big organisations, big IT functions, they're safe and secure. And of course, that's not necessarily the case, is it? Some organisations are very sort of stretched. So how can a strategy sort of save them time and money around having a kind of a strategy for cybersecurity?
Yeah, and I think this is one of passions of mine, because I'm a director of a Northwest Cybersecurity Cluster, which is a non-for-profit organization. And one thing I'm really driving, personally myself, is how can we make enterprise products that are traditionally for large organizations that can only afford these tools, how can we make them accessible and affordable for SMEs and micros and those organizations who just don't have the budgets? Because they shouldn't they shouldn't be at this kind of disadvantage of not having access to these enterprise tools. So for that reason, just I can't talk for anyone else, but at Citation, we've developed some really clever ways on how we take the enterprise products and we lay really simple interfaces on top of that to help organizations gain access to the same type of technology, but again at a really affordable and easy way, so they understand what's been presented to them. And that's one thing that you can definitely take advantage of, is working with providers who've got that kind of a mindset. So you're not giving you inferior product, you're just getting the same product that a large 500 company has, but you're just getting a kind of a light version of that, so you can actually see the same threats when you actually run that check.
So if I'm an organisation, maybe an organisation, and I've got a standard antivirus and a firewall, what more does a strategy give me as an organisation above antivirus and firewalls?
So, for example, the training is a big part, because if you've got a firewall, you need someone to operate that firewall. And another thing, you probably in the same boat as myself, that when we first set up a router or a Wi-Fi at home, when's the next time after that you're going to go in and update the firmware and make sure that it's secure? The reality is we're never going to touch it unless it breaks or it stops working. And that's exactly the same thing with a lot of IT systems, is that when we set them up, they're maybe secure at that time, but very quickly technology moves really fast, that they become outdated, and there's lots of things that you need to do to update and make sure they remain secure. And that's where having a strategy in place allows you to do the regular reviews, to ensure that you've got good policies and processes in place. So working with a provider who can give you access to these templates and customize them to your organization. And again, you don't have to spend a huge amount of money for that. They can be made available at a very good sort of affordable price. But if you just ignore it, then the chances are you're just increasing the risk of a cyber attack.
And you'll probably be able to clarify this for me. In terms of having a CTO, is it something that all businesses have to have a CTO, or can they buy in that sort of service?
So you don't have to have a CTO, you don't have to have a chief information security officer or security manager. You can absolutely buy that service in, and sometimes, or even a lot of the times, it's a lot more cost effective to do that, because you don't really need, for some organizations, you don't need a full-time person doing that, because there's other areas of your business that may require more urgent assistance. So having that kind of a buy-in approach, where you work with a partner to outsource that function, allows you to make it accessible to the same sort of expertise as you would.
Yeah, and that's helpful. Because I was thinking a lot of small providers aren't going to want to sort of suddenly employ someone full time just to manage that. So knowing you can buy in is helpful. Another area is that most of us as care providers work with local authorities and the NHS, and their contracts are becoming prescriptive on what we need to do. So when we're applying for tenders or joining frameworks, there are things that we need to have to do. So what type of sort of IT security requirements are requested in tenders, and what can we do to kind of meet those requirements?
So a lot of the requirements are really aligned, and they're very similar. For example, we've got public sector organizations that used to kind of say, well, you need to have cyber essentials in order to work with us. If you don't have cyber essentials, then you need to complete this huge questionnaire. Same thing with ISO 27001 or 9001. If you don't have them, then you need to fill this whole questionnaire out. And the good thing about getting the certifications is, A, you don't have to spend a huge amount of time filling these out time and time again. And B, that you can again demonstrate to the different suppliers that you've got security in place. But the common things are all of your usual stuff like training, patching, secure configuration, user access control. So that's something we've not touched on today, but it comes up in a lot of the requirements, is that how are you making sure that people who don't need access to information don't have access. So a lot of individuals only have access to what they need for their job and nothing else, because that again reduces the risk of someone having access to sensitive information. So there's all these things. There's cryptography, so encryption. How are you protecting your data? If if you're using a third-party provider like Google or Microsoft or any other kind of CRM or accounting software, how can you make sure that that data is encrypted, it's locked, that no one can see it? So all of these things are usually in these requirement documents. But like I said, is if you go through that process once and you can demonstrate it with a certification, it just makes it easier for everything else. There is a kind of a healthcare version of the security service in the DSP requirements. And that's, again, has a lot of very similar items as what you would see in a due diligence questionnaire.
I think just the last question, I haven't had any more come in. The last one for me really is around people on their own devices. We have a lot of people now bringing their own devices, using their devices to run certain apps and software for a business need. Where are the risks there? Because that feels like there could be a lot of risks with people using their own devices.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a huge amount of risk with that. So one of the things you have with bring your own devices, you're not able, the company or the organization, you're not in control of that device, meaning that the person's personal device may be outdated, may already have viruses on there or info stealers on there, and you're now connecting it to your corporate environment or your work environment. So that simply provides a gateway into your work information sensitive data. So having what's called a mobile device management system, I think, can be a good way to protect your data. So how does an MDM work is that you can put some policies in there to say that if you are going to allow bring your own device, you only have access to these type of documents, these type of applications like Word, Outlook, etc. And if you try to copy information from there, then it won't let you do that. So it kind of restricts it. And if someone wants to leave or you found that there was a virus, you can remove all of the company data from there with a click of a button, including if the phone was lost, you can do that. So MDM is a good way to do that. Also, bring your own device training is also important, so you can educate people. And the thing is, a lot of the times people think that security is about putting controls like technical controls in place or buying these tools to put a kind of a technical workaround in place. But a lot of the times you can still put good policy controls in place, and just training and educating people on how to use their devices. That can also become a good way to protect your company data when using bring your own device.
Fantastic. Look, I have no more questions that have come in, so I'm going to say a huge thank you to everyone for joining today. Thank you both, Morgan and Zain. We will have a further catch up on this subject, no doubt. Thank you for everyone for joining. We'll give you sort of 10 minutes of your days back to go and get a cup of tea, and we look forward to seeing you on the next event. Thank you. Zain and Morgan, if you'd like to stay on, we'll just have a quick chat.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.